Hey, welcome to Dow Stock Talk, where I talk about topics relating to investing and finance, but more specifically, the stock market. In this video, I'll be going over how to invest in video games. Now, before we get started, make sure you smash the like button because it helps the YouTube algorithm. It helps YouTube know that it is quality content and helps my videos reach a broader audience. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel and hit the notification button so you know every time I make new videos. And by the way, I try to post a video once a week. Now that that's said, let's get straight into how you invest in video games. Okay, so this is the site. The site is called Republic. They teamed up with Fitco. Fitco was a site in which a lot of gamers probably could end up pledging money, and they started the concept of game investing. However, Republic is the platform in which you can invest in startups and support them and all kinds of stuff like that. I will do a separate video for the startups as well. But because they teamed up with Fitco, this is one of the new features that they offer. And I'll end up explaining how it works a little later, but I'm going to just show you briefly how it works. These are some of the games in which you can decide to invest in. And once the campaign reaches that amount, then it will end up going into the develop stage in which making the game and getting it published. I actually think this is a really cool idea. They were saying the video game market by 2025 is supposed to be a $300 billion market. They say, as far as profitability, that investors from the 3 years in a row, 2017, 2018, 2019, with returns of 556%. This is coming from the website, so I don't necessarily really trust that, but I do keep that in mind. Also, they showed that some of the game was recognized on some of these platforms for getting an award because they were really good. And then these are the games that has been funded, and some of them had already been published, and you get to see the returns. Like for this game, 304% return. It shows you the amount of sales. It shows you how much money they end up raising. This one is another example, 139% return. This one, 120% return in the 18 months. Now, a lot of these, one of the downsides about this is a lot of the entry point could be a little high for the amount of risk that maybe an average investor might want to take. I don't really know how much money that you can invest in, your risk tolerance, but a lot of these games, the minimum is $8,000. However, there are a few where they were $500, and I'll actually show you what game that was. And this is the game where it's already been funded, but you still can invest in the game. So I'll explain the details exactly how it works, because at first it could be a little confusing. So this one, Homeworld 3, this is the game in which you only need $500 to invest in. So once I end up clicking this, I already had the link pulled up. So this is Homeworld 3. They even got a trailer in which you can see the campaign, the amount of money they end up raising. They even have it where you can order the game and invest. So you also, if you didn't want to invest, so if you're like really into the game itself, you can pledge some money, and then they end up giving you rewards and perks that other people who purchased the game would not get. So let me just show you a brief trailer. I'm not going to have it running for a long time, but just to give you an idea of, the type of games or the graphics and the whole idea of it. These games seems like really quality. This one is supported on Windows. Yeah, so I just wanted to kind of give you a brief trailer of the game and what they end up doing. For example, if you invest the $500, you'll end up getting a free copy as the game as well. They give you the description. These are for the reward side if you wanted to pledge. And people interacting in the comments or something, a discussion if you have questions, was pretty much it. So when you click on invest, this is what you'll end up seeing. Once again, I already clicked the button and I already have the link up. So this is where they kind of explain exactly how it works. And as it goes down, I'll exactly explain how it works. So price per share is $500. Now, the way this actually works is you're entitled to revenue that the game end up selling. So it's kind of, you can think about it kind of like a royalty, because these games are created by developers, so they don't actually have a company. So you're investing in your stake, in which, depending on the amount of revenue, you're entitled to that revenue. So I don't know if you kind of follow, but if not, I'll show you into details how it end up working. And normally you're entitled to the revenue for up to a certain amount of time. And in this case, it was 18 months. The game do have to be published and developed, so that is a type of risk you end up taking. So of course, Fidco has stake in it, so they want the game and end up to generate revenue so they can also make money. But I want to do that is a risk. If the game is not published or there's some complications, as any other investment, especially like at a startup like company, you can end up losing all or some of your money. But that's the risk you end up taking. So how it initially starts off, as Fig can take, they're kind of entitled to 14% of the revenue sales. And I'll explain it into detail a little bit later. And once the campaign exceeds the amount needed, that Fig end up increasing the state in which revenue that they are entitled to. All right, so this is how it end up breaking down. So 85% of the revenue that Fig stake would be distributed to the investors. That's why they have 85% dividend payout. So as of the revenue that Fig end up getting, which where all the investors would end up pulling in, Fig would pay out 85% evenly. So in this case, these are the assumptions that was made. So if these assumptions end up changing, this graph can end up changing as well. So I just want you to know, they just trying to give you a general idea. So this is your investment, the $500. It shows you the amount of units that has to be sold for you to break even. And as the sales go up, you can see your profit goes up. So that is kind of how it works. This is a more detailed, I guess, image, so that can kind of help you end up understanding. So first you have a gamer, they have an idea, but they need funding. So what they end up doing is there's actually two sides of the pledge. So this is more so for people that is actually interested in the game itself. They pledge some money, they get a few rewards. And then you have the investment side, where I'm pretty much focusing on, where you have the pool of investors. They gather up a total amount of money, and then it is given to Fidco, which they distribute it in a form of share. And once again, your share is what allows you to entitle to the revenue that the game end up making. So it's not exactly like owning like a stock. It would be like ownership in the company. What this is, your rights to receive revenue based off of the sales. So this part is the developer stake as far as the amount of revenue that they are entitled to, and this is Fig, which represent the investors. So step one, as you can say, investors end up investing. In this particular game, Homeworld 3, once it reached their goal, they end up giving the money to the developers. Once the game is successfully developed and published, then for the next 18 months, that's where the revenue sales will end up occurring, in which the investors will receive profit. So, okay, they give you example. First up, the revenue sales is 14% of the revenue sales would be entitled to Fidco, which would be entitled to the investors. All right, so and then after that, any money that exceeds over the campaign, Fitco increases their their rights to the revenue. So if it exceeds 5 million, Fitco gets 1%, as this. And for example, if it exceeds 9 million, Fitco increased their stake by 11%. So okay, this is how it works. Out of Fitco total amount of revenue, 85% of that will be distributed evenly into the actual investors. So if I was to invest in the form of a dividend over the period of time, which in this case, it would be 18 months. So to give you an example, if fixed funds is $5 million and the rewards is $5 million, the total campaign would be $10 million. So after that, fixed stake, as we talk about, is 14%, but the campaign, because it exceeded the amount that's raised, and which was over 9 million, in this example, they would have the 11%. 14 plus 11 is 25%. So FIG would be entitled to 25% of all the revenue sales given within that period. And then FIG would end up doing 85% of that would be evenly distributed to investors. So that is how it actually works. I thought this was very interesting and I thought I would share, but I do want you to know this, I would categorize this as a high risk. I do in the future plan on buying or investing into one of these games, and then you can kind of get into the nitty gritty. But if you have questions, they do have an email in which you can go to and look at. And I definitely was thinking, if you were kind of seriously looking into investing in this, that you read all the documentation, because unlike stocks, it's very hard to liquidate, and the rules as far as the audit and stuff is very based off of a lot of it sometimes on trust. So I would definitely make sure you do a comprehensive research if you was interested in this. And by the way, I will at some point invest in one of these games so you can kind of see my whole, I guess I'll be like the test dummy. You can see the whole process from start to finish and how it ended up turning out for me. And if you had a game and you wanted to end up making a pitch, you can, submit your proposal and submit your ideas. And then what Fitco will do is they have a screening process. So the games or the development process or developers that they think will be highly successful after their screening will then be shown on this site. So that is another interesting thing. I thought this was really cool. I like the innovation, the creativity, and I think that this whole concept can even go outside of the gaming industry into different other sectors. And I would be extremely happy if that's actually happened. I do think if I was a gamer, I would really be interested in it because I would have an insight of personal games that I like, and I would also want the product, just not exactly from an investor's point, but from a gamer point. They said that the majority of their games released have positive returns, and they end up showing you the date it was released and the date that the returns end up occurring to the investors over the period of time. So these are some of the games, and there's the release date, the end date, and these are the returns that they end up receiving. Now, I didn't think they end up factoring into, if you kind of see the small print, transaction fees or taxes, but these are relatively high returns. But these are returns that you can expect more so on that ground floor level. So I definitely like that. And I would like to say, if I go over, once I go to the process, I would like to see how involved and how much I can interact with the gamers and the creators. And because the more I can interact, the more data that I would want them to actually have, but as an investor would kind of really help me out. So as of now, the way I look at it for me personally is more of an experimental phase. So once I end up going through the experimental phase and it turns out well, I probably will take a small stake in my total investment portfolio. Now, these are other perspective games that is actually supposed to be that's supposed to be coming soon. And once again, if you're an investor, you can also pre-order these, and that actually is everything. Once again, if you have questions, you can email them, or also you can leave them in the comments below, and I'll try to get you the answer, whether I have to call them a million times or whatever. But that's it. And that concludes this video. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you hit the like button, and I'll catch you guys later.